The Auditor-General provides assurance to Parliament on the accountability and performance of the Victorian public sector. The Auditor-General conducts financial audits and performance audits and reports on the results of these audits to Parliament. On the 20th of August 2014, the Auditor-General tabled his performance audit report, Access to Legal Aid. Victoria Legal Aid, or VLA, is the main deliverer of legal aid services in Victoria. It is a statutory authority established under the Legal Aid Act, which sets out 4 main objectives. These include providing legal aid cost-effectively, economically and efficiently, managing its resources to make legal aid available at a reasonable cost and on an equitable basis, improving access to justice, and being innovative in how it provides legal aid. The Act also requires VLA to prioritise who can access its services and the types of legal matters it deals with. VLA is part of a mixed model of service provision. Private practitioners and community legal centres also provide legal aid services on behalf of VLA. Legal aid is essentially publicly funded legal services provided to people who are unable to afford it. It is an important part of democratic society. As the majority of people who need legal aid are vulnerable people with complex legal needs, legal aid can enhance fairness and equality in the justice system and improve access to legal remedies. Legal aid involves a broad range of services. It includes intensive services, such as managing cases and representation at court. It also includes other services, such as web-based legal information, telephone advice, advice at court through duty lawyers, and community education about legal matters. Many of these services are widely accessible, such as the web-based legal information, telephone information, and legal information publications. Intensive services, such as ongoing legal casework and duty lawyer services, represent the smallest number of people assisted. Because of the intensity and cost of the services, there are eligibility criteria to decide who can access them. This is a requirement under the Legal Aid Act. The audit assessed whether VLA is performing its functions and duties and achieving its objectives. This included examining how effectively and efficiently it planned the supply of legal aid services, how effectively, efficiently and economically it delivered legal aid services, and how effectively it monitored its performance. The audit was focused on the services that VLA provides. It did not examine the performance of individual private practitioners or community legal centres beyond how VLA gains assurance around their performance. This was essentially a positive assurance audit. Overall, VLA is performing its role, delivering legal aid services across Victoria, and has a good understanding of demand for its services and risks around its funding. It is providing its services in an environment of increasing demand and fixed funding, and this has led VLA to tighten eligibility for its more intensive and costly services, which has implications for access to justice. The extent to which VLA is meeting performance expectations, however, is constrained by its performance framework, which limits the usefulness of performance information available. VLA takes a structured approach to planning for the supply and delivery of legal aid services. This includes environmental scanning that focuses on the drivers of demand for its services, and analysing the results of nationwide surveys to understand the types of people most likely to need legal aid services. As part of its service planning, VLA also undertakes modelling to further understand demand drivers. Key drivers that VLA has identified include the recruitment of police and protective services officers, sentencing policy, the strong focus on family violence and child protection, prisoner numbers, and economic conditions. VLA also has a sound understanding of issues around its financial sustainability and risks associated with its funding. VLA has experienced funding issues over a number of years, with deficits in the last 2 years and projected future deficits. It has been partly successful in obtaining additional funding to address the increasing demand for its services. Temporary funding was converted to recurrent funding in 2012-13, and additional funding of $3.4 million will be provided from 2013-14. While this has gone some way to address VLA's recent operating deficits, VLA's recurrent funding is still largely based on service demand levels from 2008. VLA has also undertaken a range of other actions to reduce its costs in an effort to remain financially sustainable. These actions include bringing high-cost legal services in-house and greater use of in-house staff. Determining who can access services and what services they can access is a key part of VLA's demand management and ongoing financial sustainability. VLA is in the process of implementing a priority client framework that determines who will be eligible to receive the most intensive and costly services. The framework prioritises those experiencing disadvantage. Essentially, the more intensive and costly the service, the more criteria the client needs to meet. VLA has also tightened eligibility criteria as a way to further reduce costs. The changes have meant fewer people are able to access grants of assistance for legal representation. While this has implications for access to justice, determining eligibility for grants of assistance is a requirement under the Legal Aid Act, and the approach is also consistent with VLA's obligations to manage the Legal Aid Fund and to provide legal aid economically. It is evident that VLA is delivering its services across Victoria as intended. However, while services are being delivered, fewer intensive services are being provided. Grants of legal assistance, for example, have reduced, although the most recent data shows that for 2013-14, duty lawyer services increased, reflecting changes to eligibility criteria and shifting more people to lower intensity services. Less intensive services, such as website visits to access legal information, have increased. Potential legal aid clients still encounter some barriers to access. Two of the main barriers which VLA is aware of relate to triage and intake and the timeliness of its telephone service. Triage and intake has been improved by providing a consolidated phone number and streamlining the referral processes. VLA is also addressing the timeliness of its telephone service. This service has experienced long-standing issues around the number of calls answered, with large number of calls being abandoned because of waiting times. Additional staff have been recruited to enhance this service, and the most recent data shows some improvement in the number of calls answered. That VLA is providing its services is clear, but not the extent to which it is providing them effectively, efficiently, and economically. VLA has a performance monitoring and reporting framework in place, and its board receives a range of performance reports. In addition, VLA undertakes client satisfaction surveys, which also inform decision-making. VLA also has a sound evaluation framework, with a range of evaluations and service reviews undertaken as an input into continuous improvement. However, there are weaknesses with the framework, including the adequacy of its internal performance measures, and whether they provide senior management and the board with appropriate assurance. Reflecting the fact that this is a largely positive assurance report, we made two recommendations. The first was focused on improving VLA's performance monitoring and reporting framework. The second was about further understanding the needs of its priority clients and improving its telephone service. VLA has accepted both recommendations. All our reports are available on our website. If you have any questions about this or other reports, or if you have anything else you would like to discuss with us, including ideas for future audit topics, please call us on 03 8601 7000 or contact us via our website.